Welcome back to Duel Academy. Today in Tag Force 3, we're going to take a look at the Elemental Hero deck. Now, there are many different ways to build Elemental Heroes, but this deck that I'm showing off today is going to be focused on the original game plan, that being pump out as many fusions as possible and just be super aggressive. So we're focusing the deck primarily around Sparkman and Wildheart because those two have the best fusions of any of the original Elemental Heroes. We've also got Bladedge and Necroshade since they fuse with Sparkman and Wildheart and also kind of have their own nice little interaction since Necroshade can let us summon out a Bladedge for free, and Bladedge by himself is stronger than most of the fusions. Other than that, we've got a bunch of fusion cards, a bunch of consistency cards like Emergency Call and Rhoda. We've got Jinzo and Royal Decree to help with the back row, and like I said, we're just looking to go all in on being as aggressive as possible. The extra deck consists of just all of the Sparkman, Wildheart, Bladedge related fusions. King of the Swamp helps us reach for things like Wild Wingman and Shining Flare Wingman, which makes it pretty interesting. Let's go ahead and hop into some duels. Okay, first game we're up against Tyranno, and we open with a little bit of an awkward hand, but Sangan is pretty good going first, so I go ahead and just set that and the Royal Decree, pass it to our opponent. He's going to run over the Sangan, no big deal, that's exactly what we wanted. Now, I did make a huge misplay here. I should have grabbed another King of the Swamp so I could have done some fusion plays, but I, for some reason, grabbed Wildheart. I don't know what I was thinking. Oh well, doesn't really matter too much. I decided to go ahead and bring control so that way I could summon out the Jinzo. I figure it's one of the few things that I can do at this point to put some sort of threat on the board. 2400 attack and no traps is pretty decent, I guess, but I am pretty afraid that it's going to get outed here. I pass it back to him after doing 24, and sure enough, brain control comes down. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Down comes Dark Triceratops, 2700 to our face. Unfortunate, but the Premature Burial top deck here is crazy. Because we have the King of the Swamp in the graveyard, now we have unlocked our fusion plays. While I did screw it up on that last turn, we can actually do something now. Summon back the King of the Swamp, then I use Polymerization. Now I had to check what fusion was going to be able to beat this Dark Triceratops, and I wanted to summon Shining Flare Wingman because I love going for that card. It's just such a fun card to use, but I just didn't have enough heroes in the graveyard to boost his attack, so that way we could get over Dark Triceratops. It was just going to be a little too weak, I think, so I go ahead and summon out Plasma Vice instead, because Plasma Vice lets us discard a card to destroy an attack position monster. So we can go ahead and clear Dark Triceratops out that way, use the Miracle Fusion, and go ahead and just summon another copy. I was going to do Shining Flare Wingman, but I figured let's just go for as much damage as possible, just to 100% guarantee, don't have to do any math or anything. Plasma Vice comes out and can just secure the game with 2 copies of Plasma Vice direct to the face. Okay, for our second duel, I decided to take on Jim Crocodile Cook and his rock deck using the fossil cards. It'll be pretty interesting to see how we play against this. The early card destruction is going to force us to dump our entire hand, but that's not necessarily the worst thing because I think we actually came out with a slightly better hand, maybe. I don't know, at least we have the King of the Swamp. We can get some fusion plays going, set the Sangan so that way he can attack into it, and we can go ahead and search for, this time I remembered, a King of the Swamp. So that way we have that universal fusion compatibility. Now he sets his whole hand, so I immediately know, okay, he's set down a Morphing Jar. So I go ahead and activate the Royal Decree just to make sure any traps among those set cards are negated, and I summon out Stratos here. I decide to search Necroshade. My reason for doing so is that I know for sure, I'm like 99% sure that that is a Morphing Jar, and I figure my hand's going to get discarded anyways. Necroshade is the only thing that I have that's really going to benefit from being in the graveyard at this moment that I can search with Stratos at least. So we go ahead and search that out, summon out Plasma Vice, and go ahead and start swinging. We do the piercing damage over the Morphing Jar. Sure enough, it is that, and we get to discard that Necroshade, and I go ahead and pass back to our opponent. He's going to activate Hand Destruction here. I wasn't quite sure what to discard. I choose to get rid of the Morphing Jar and the Sparkman. He's going to activate Heavy Storm. No more Royal Decree for us, which is kind of unfortunate. He sets Swords and 2 other cards. A bit worrying, but I had a game plan here. I'm able to search out the Bladedge, and I can use Rhoda to search out another hero. I wasn't really sure which one to grab, but I go ahead and go with Sparkman. Now, I kind of misplayed here, but it ends up working out. I activate Our Righteous Justice, it pops 2. I meant to summon the Bladedge first so I could clear them all out, but it's a good thing I didn't, because as soon as I do, Torrential Tribute takes us out. Unfortunate. If I would have just hit the 2 set cards, that might have been a bit better. But either way, we've managed to clear the board at the very least. We can go ahead and do some fusion plays and summon out Shining Flare Wingman, my favorite card of the deck. 4,900 attack because of that attack boost effect. Just barely not able to end the game, but he's only got 100 life points and he's staring down a massive monster. Sure enough, a T set is just not going to do it for him. Top deck the Heavy Storm, clear the back row, swing it with Shining Flare Wingman. We know for sure that that burn effect is going to secure the game. Of course, since we're playing heroes, we've got to do at least one duel against Jaden. We open up with a okay hand, but I decide to go ahead and just search out the poly and set everything so that way we can go for Morphing Jar. My idea here is that hopefully in the 5 cards we draw plus the 6th for turn, we'll see a Miracle Fusion, and we can use that with the Wildheart and King of Swamp in graveyard, and we'll also have the Royal Decree and whatever other cards we have to hopefully combo off big. Now, Jaden is going to make a Wild Edge, and that is a little bit scary, but we're only going to take 1,800 points of damage, so it's not too bad. Unfortunately, he gets the Miracle Fusion, and we did not see one in our draws. Unfortunate. He's got a Plasma Vice now. That is quite concerning. Now, unfortunately, this is kind of a tricky situation because without Miracle Fusion, we're only going to be able to make 1 fusion, and he has 2 fusions, so we're kind of at a disadvantage here, to say the least. I do have Snipe Hunter, I guess I could use to pop his field, but then we have to rely on a die roll, and that seems a little, risky, to say the least. I decide to go ahead and eventually summon out the Stratos here, so that way we can get a search. And we get a copy of Necroshade. Now, my reasoning behind this is that I looked in his graveyard and saw that he only really had Burstinatrix in there, and Necro Shaman allows us to destroy one of his monsters and then swap it for a monster in his graveyard. So I figure getting rid of something like the Plasma Vice and trading it for a Burstinatrix is, at least something. And then I have the Necroshade in the graveyard that we can use next turn to summon out the Bladedge. And of course, the main thing here is that I'm going to be able to just set the Mirror Force and pass, baiting him to attack into us since he still has that Wild Edge. He's going to lose 4 cards to the Mirror Force, and we have officially blown him out at this point. This is pretty much going to be game over for him. I don't really see how he's going to come back from this. Emergency Call is going to allow us to search out a hero. I grab Wildheart for no real reason, I guess. I'm not sure why. I don't know if there was really anything else I could have grabbed, though, that would have mattered here. Bladedge comes out 1,800 with Stratos, 1,900 with Necro Shaman, and 2,600 with Bladedge. He is certainly on a pretty steep clock. One more turn for Jaden. He top decks the Heavy Storm, of course. Unfortunate, our Royal Decree goes down, but he really has nothing to defend himself here, just a set monster, and that's really not going to do it. I go ahead and summon out the Snipe Hunter and go ahead and start firing off shots just to clear that out, to make sure we don't run into anything that could be a threat. Morphing Jar really wouldn't have mattered. And just to rub it in, I go ahead and make a fusion summon for Plasma Vice, because why not? Might as well style on him. Okay, so we've seen the deck in action. What are my thoughts on the Elemental Hero Fusion deck? Well, first off, I'll say it is a lot of fun. Heroes are just naturally very fun to play. They have a lot of very cool and very nostalgic monsters that are a lot of fun to summon. But really, it suffers from the same weakness as every other fusion-based deck, and that is just that it takes so much investment to get so little return compared to what other decks can accomplish. The fact that these fusion monsters that you have to invest 3 cards into to summon can die from a single Sakuretsu armor is super unfortunate. The back row hate like Jinzo and Royal Decree and Our Righteous Justice certainly helps, but it still really struggles with dealing with any sort of removal. Overall, I think that this deck has a few too many weak points to really be considered competitive. It definitely is more of a casual fun deck, but there are some more consistent and more powerful versions of heroes out there that maybe we can talk about in another video. If you want to see those other hero decks, make sure to leave a like and let me know down in the comments. And of course, let me know if there's any other decks you want me to take a look at next time. Also, let me know what you think of this new format. I tried to make something that's a little bit bit more digestible and more focused on the gameplay, to both cut back on the editing for me and to, you know, make something that's just easier for people to watch instead of a long, in-depth card-by-card breakdown. Anyways, that's enough rambling from me. Make sure you subscribe for more Tag Force content, and I'll see you again soon.